Thanks again, Henrietta, for being with us. The Rare Tea Lady, as we know. So tell us first who you are, what you do, your relationship with tea and food in general when you're growing up.
Yeah, so they call me the tea lady, but I'm Henrietta, and I started a tea company back in 2004. My God, it's like 22 years ago. Almost. It was about April when I began. And I fell in love with tea a few years before that. From a very typical British background, my family drank industrial tea bags. It was very normal. And I liked it, I just didn't love it. It wasn't something that I was, super passionate about. And I had this strange career in corporate finance, but in the operations side of things, I never dealt with money. I was just making things happen in documents. Really boring. Imagine sitting next to me at dinner at that time and you would ask me, so what do you do? Well, I do financial documentation. And but it took me into China. I got to visit China and I got to experience tea like this. Beautiful, incredible, fascinating flavors and teas that I had no idea about. I had no idea that tea existed beyond, an English breakfast tea bag, really. I mean, I knew there was such a thing as green tea and oolong, but it wasn't something that I was familiar with or had any understanding of. And then when I tasted it for the first time, when I've had my first cup of Taiwanese oolong in Hong Kong, I was like, what is this? This is tea? It was such a revelation. It was like living in black and white, and then suddenly there's a color in front of you. Oh my God. I mean, I can still remember, and the flavor and the reverence that people took over it. It wasn't just something in a, industrially made in a mug, drink it down. It was something crafted and taken care of and sipped in a tiny cup. And it was expensive. I remember I was taken by a client to a hotel for tea. We had tea, and they chose the tea for me, and it was like $20 for a pot of tea. And this is late 90s. Can you imagine? It seemed to me like the most exotic and extraordinary thing. And then I tasted the tea and I completely get why it's $20. And someone made it for me. A lady stood beside. She filled water into the gaiwan. She poured it into a jug. She poured it into my cup. And then when I needed a refill, she came and did the same thing. And there was this service, this care, this delight of the man showing it to me. And I fell in love, and I thought, God, there's so much more to this world that I need to learn. And I'm still learning. I still know this much about tea, and there's a whole, realms and realms more to learn after 22 years. Well, more, 25 years probably. I've been obsessed with tea. And also China had been quite closed off. It was quite difficult to travel into there, but it was starting to open up. And I was able to read about Fuding in Fujian, where white silvertip came from, that had been part of, emperors' burial rites. I mean, it was that important in Chinese culture for thousands of years. And there was this town where it came from, and I hired a driver and I went there. That was possible, which I think it hadn't been for a long time. So I was just at the right place at the right time with the right enthusiasm.
For sure, there's a lot of history and whatever goes on for literally thousands of years in China with tea and the history. So it's always fascinating. I don't know even much. I'm sure I don't know as much as you do, honestly. But it's one of those things that the sort of the heritage and all that.
I know some of it, and I'm always learning. And I'm also a generalist. I love to travel the world and work with tea producers, not just in China. That's where I started, but. In this spring, I'll be going to Sri Lanka and then up into the Himalayas in India and Nepal and perhaps Bhutan. I'm trying to make a trip there. And East Africa or New Zealand, wherever there are amazing tea makers, I want to go there and visit them. And so I'm more of a pluralist, a generalist, than someone who's really deeply knowledgeable about, say, Taiwanese tea or Japanese tea, someone who focuses in on one thing. So you can for sure find gaps in my knowledge, but perhaps not in my enthusiasm and my willingness to learn.
Amazing. So as you said, you transitioned from more traditional work, whatever you want to call it, the corporate world, into sort of your own business in tea. How did that transition came about, or what was it like in general, the process?
Well, people think, oh, you're brave to leave a corporate job and set up on your own, or they call entrepreneurs brave. But I think the reality is we're naive and stupid, because to create something when something doesn't exist is an act of, kind of blind. Blind naivety, because you have no idea what's ahead. And it was much, much harder than I imagined. I was 32, I think. Very, very optimistic. And I was like, oh, well, if I work this hard in my corporate world and I put that same amount of effort or more, I'll have this, very wonderful free life. But your own business takes everything. You have to give it absolutely everything. There's no time when you're not at work. You can't switch off or hand over to someone else. And so the building of it was incredibly difficult, and it took a long time to make any money at all. It was, and I didn't have any investment. I had a small money that I'd saved, maybe to invest in, a property or something, down payment on a mortgage, but I invested it instead in the business. And there were some really hard times. It wasn't just like an easy road, but there was a reason to get up in the morning. And I actually got very sick. I've had cancer 3 times now. I have the BRCA2 genetic fault that predisposes me for some cancers. And I 3 months after I quit my job, I think I was just about to start. I just started Rare Tea. I got diagnosed with a very serious breast cancer that nearly took my life, but didn't. And having something else to focus on was incredibly useful. Like I wasn't the sick lady, I was the tea lady. And every decade it's come back to like knock me on the head and go, hey, are you putting your priorities in the right place? What's the worst thing that can happen? It almost feels like I don't regret the cancers I've had. They've taught me something, and they've refocused my my sense of values and recalibrated what was important in life. And actually just recently I went to London to have a biopsy because I thought it had come back, and for the first time, this is the 4th biopsy I've had, it was negative. And that helped me to be like, oh, you're so lucky. Whatever happens in your life right now, whatever trials you face, thank God it's not cancer. So good and bad come from it.
That's a tough experience, but it just kind of reminds me of like when sports, not the same level obviously, but someone has like a flu or something, and when they're playing a certain sports game, then the bodies tend to be more focused, even though they're sick or something, just so that they can push through the difficulty. It sounds almost similar to that, where you put you channel your energy into your business and what you're interested in, and that kind of, at the very least, you're not focused on everything else, right?
Yeah,
that always
exactly,
helps.
and it really does help. And then, as I learned more about tea, I realised that there was a lot of injustice and exploitation in tea, and that really helped refocus my life. Because at first, I was just in love with the plant, the craft, the farmers that I came across in China, and actually, in most of Asia, in China certainly, in Japan. It's a very valued crop, and if you're producing something really good, you can get really good money for it, like thousands and thousands of dollars a kilo for the really, really top quality rare teas. And the people, the community, the nation understands the value, like perhaps French people do about wine. That's not always the case, and the global north is a consumer of teas from places like India, Africa, Sri Lanka, and they don't have the same value for tea, and exploitation has crept in or began, and it doesn't have to be that way. We know that tea can be highly valued and bring a very sustainable, economically viable and fruitful life for people, as it does in places like China and Japan. And I saw that wasn't happening in Africa and India, that there was no connection between farmer and tea, that big brands obscured things, and you just say English breakfast. So imagine if I gave you a bottle of wine and I said, oh, it's red. You were like, okay. No, sorry, it's single origin, it's French. That's about as much as you might get out of tea. I mean, most people don't even have no idea what country it comes from. just says black or English breakfast or green. It might say China, or there's a lot more behind that. There's a farmer, there's a farm, just as there is with wine. There's a craftsmanship and makers and communities, and it became my goal in life to connect people back to farms, to tea farmers, to tea communities, so that they might thrive in the way that vineyards might. And there's so much work to do because people really live in what we would term unacceptable poverty in order for cheap tea bags to exist. To give you an example, Malawi is an economy in East Africa based on tea. It's the second biggest employer after the government, and it's the second biggest export. So they rely on it for foreign exchange and the buying of things like power, oil, and it's a ever decreasing value. No one knows it comes from there. We don't know we're being part of the great poverty of Malawi when we drink English breakfast tea, but the commodity market buys tea as cheaply as it can to go into tea bags that we might just pick up from the supermarket shelf. And that lack of connection, that lack of knowing where things come from, means that tea drinkers are connected to poverty. And just give an example of what that really means. In 1970, I was interviewing the president of the Tea Association this time last year. And he told me that in 1970, a commodity price of the cheapest tea you could buy was $10 for a kilo of tea. Or was it $20? I can't remember exactly, was it $10 or $20, but the equivalent would be between $90 and $120 now in today's money, depending on what metric you used. And that January 2025, a kilo of Malawi tea at commodity market sold for less than $1. That's completely unsustainable. And that's why there is, it's one of the poorest nations in the world, and inflation is so crazy as the price drops and there's no foreign currency that a mother will go to shops at the beginning of the week. This is a mother who's working and say, okay, now do I buy enough food to try and feed my kids through the week, knowing that the price might go up? I can't afford to buy it all week, so will I feed my children 3 meals a day, 2 meals a day, so that it lasts, the food lasts? Or 1 meal a day, because I don't know what the price of rice or ensima is going to be. It's, when you go to visit families and you visit people and you know them and you know the conditions that they're trying to face, it does make you think, I'm probably going to try and drink the best tea I can for the best value that goes directly to the money goes directly to the farmer, rather than some brokerage and commodity market. It's easy that decision is easy once you know. And I think that, thank you for giving me a voice here, because once you know, you can't unknow, and you want to support those ladies. It's 15 million people in tea across the world, and most of them are women, and most of them are living in poverty.
Right. It sounds like almost, situation with coffee, with chocolate, anything like that, right?
Yeah,
like if you
absolutely.
go and buy a bar, whatever brand, name brand you can get, it's I can get sort of from a consumer perspective, it's easy and you get a certain level of consistency, obviously. Yeah. And if you buy like bars, big name brand bars, the one thing that they don't taste like anything, but the process makes it so that it's so smooth. Yeah. And teas are different, but obviously, chocolate is the same kind of idea, I assume, right?
It is, I think so. I think you, especially British people, that our culture is to drink strong black tea with milk, and the milk will shorten the flavour and sort of smooth it out in the same way that milk chocolate will, so that you can eat more of it, and the flavour of the original product is not so important. Same with Starbucks coffee, or like a cappuccino. Yeah, but if we take the coffee bean or the cacao or the tea as it is and enjoy it as it is, the maker and the flavour is so much more obvious, and it gives so much more pleasure. You can have something that's fine, and then you can have something that's amazing, that's going to flood your life with pleasure, and wow, for a few pence more, I've been missing out on all this, and I'm supporting communities around the world that might otherwise be exploited. It's a win for everyone. We're not asking people to be altruistic without any reward. The reward is absolutely there in the flavor, and trying to make the world a tiny bit better.
Right.
It's not a terrible thing to do.
Talking about the, I guess, value of tea. Sometimes you hear about auctions, especially in China, like you said, in Japan, maybe that go maybe on those tea cakes go for thousands
poor,
of dollars.
yeah.
I'm actually interested in that as well, as far as how does that work? How does that work? In general.
That's so interesting. I was just in Yunnan this year. I love Yunnan. It's right by the Myanmar border. It's such an interesting part of China. The pu'er cake has been traded quite a lot, especially in Hong Kong, as a value thing, rather like champagne. So when you open a really old vintage bottle of champagne, it might not be good because it doesn't necessarily age really well. Age doesn't necessarily give it a better flavor with vintage champagne, but the value is the unopened bottle. Say it was, Napoleon's cellar or came from the Titanic or it had a lot of age, and the value is this amazing artifact, right? And with a tea cake, with a pu'er cake, a bingja, you can guarantee the age. It usually has a piece of paper inside it, which has the age stamp, and then there's the stamp, and then the paper. And if it's been, if it's all original, you can say this really is pre-revolutionary, this comes from 1930, or you can really know that it's aged, and that gives it huge value as an object. In terms of taste, well, is it absolutely incredibly better or worse? It becomes outside of my experience and my pocket. I can't afford to drink those pu'ers, but I do know that there are amazing pu'ers being made right now in Yunnan by great farmers, and some of them are not made into cakes. And actually, in Yunnan, most people don't drink bingcha; they drink it loose leaf because you can get more consistency in the brew because the leaf is the same size; it's not broken off in clumps, and it's easier to infuse. You get a lovely flavor. You know exactly what you're getting, and because you're smelling it, tasting it right there, you can drink a bit before you buy, rather than a bingcha where you have to buy the whole thing before you don't know how that cake is going to be. And there's so much pleasure in a more affordable bingcha, a bit more affordable pu'er. It doesn't have to cost the earth, and it doesn't. And now there is the wet ferment, the not the raw pu'er, but the aged. No, I'm losing all my words. You can rather than just doing it in a really, really long, decades worth fermentation, you can start by pile fermenting the pu'er, so that you start off that fermentation process, and then either do it as a loose leaf or in a cake, and it takes 5 years or 3 years to make something really delicious, maybe even 18 months to get something quite drinkable, rather than 20 or 30 years. So there are reasons why I would drink a tea that was really expensive. That might be because there was so little of it in the world. It was so precious. It was crafted from this very special leaf, rather than something that was just because it was very old. But that's my personal opinion, and God, as I'm saying, I'm always learning, and someone can tell me, well, you're totally wrong. I've tasted this 80-year-old pu'er, and it's so phenomenal, it's worth every penny.
But then, just stepping back a little bit, then tell us what is the difference between just the basics of like fermentation. So let's say fermented tea process. I mean, they all be fermented mostly.
No, that's a really funny one. I think that was when the British first started trying to understand how to make tea. There was some obscurification, and also there were just some differences in language and how words were translated. So most tea is not fermented; it's oxidized. But in China, we sometimes use the word fermentation, or they say the word fermentation in English, meaning oxidization, because there's a confusion. But yeah, so like a white tea, like the one we're drinking now from Malawi, this is not oxidized. This is just dried with some oxidization. But when you go to a green tea or a black tea or an oolong tea, then you are controlling a certain amount of oxidization. In green, the least, and in black tea, the most, and in oolong, somewhere in the middle. And you're changing the flavor profile by how much the amino acids and the oils in the leaf are exposed to air and oxidation. And then there's other things you can do like roasting and toasting and steaming and all the lovely crafts there are. But it's all the same raw material, this beautiful leaf that goes into this, like all wine comes from grapes, all tea comes from Camellia sinensis. And then there's all the herbs that are not tea.
Like the tisanes and all that.
Yeah.
Right,
But
right.
that's another linguistic tick. Like in English, we would say a herb we put in hot water we call tea, but that's not true. It's not cha. And so we say mint tea, but it's not. It's mint.
Well, I mean, the same goes for even in Chinese, right? For us, we call something tea in cha, right? But it's not tea per se. But because you just kind of, the convention becomes...
I was
that's what that
really
is, right?
shocked. I spent quite a lot of time in China this spring. And last spring, we're in 2026 now, in 2025, I spent quite a lot of time in China and I traveled around all over and there was a lot of milk tea and it was cold. I was really shocked. Like in the 4 years that I hadn't been, it's the longest time I hadn't been in China, there was like cold milk teas everywhere and fruit and tea. And this is such a huge change because tea is a medicine that is mostly warm in China, or was. And even when you go to a restaurant, you get tap water drinking water that is warm or tepid, not cold, better for your digestion. So to drink cold tea was really a shock. But there were some very delicious ones, and the world is always moving and changing.
Right. For sure. I mean, that's the thing about tea culture, and like you said, everything that has to do with food or everything in the world. So, to you, what's the most important thing maybe in tea culture or anything that has to do with tea?
The most important thing for me, I think, is that know where it comes from, know the place, know the community, know the terroir, as you would want to with a wine, and hopefully that you would buy from someone who's buying directly from the farmer, because it's really wonderful that people, agricultural communities, especially marginalized agricultural communities in the world, might thrive through our support rather than be exploited. And that's such a simple step we can make, is like knowing where things come from. When you buy your tea, wherever you buy it from, if the person who you're buying it from knows where it comes from and could tell you a story of a farm or the relationship they have, and know that the money is going to them, I think that's and it should be delicious. Maybe the delicious first. First try delicious tea that comes from somewhere and someone. That would be a revolution. I would die happy if it was normal for people to think, I buy first for quality, deliciousness, and second for the connection with the people. Then that revolution really would happen. Nice. I'm sorry, you've got a kitten on your knee.
No, I know.
That's Polly.
Hello.
Do you want me to take her?
No, it's fine. Oh.
She's so friendly. Is she okay with you?
Yeah, totally.
She's just, she just wants to make sure you're okay. I think she's an empath.
Nice. Hello. Oh. Wait.
No, not frightened.
Too tall to climb.
Darling, you're so beautiful.
Nice.
You're so pretty. She really is. Look at those eyes. Look at that.
Nice.
That's Polly. Sorry to scrub you.
No worries.
Yes. It's not complicated. I think people often think there's a kind of snobbery and difficulty with really nice tea that is exclusive. And I think sometimes some people in the tea world are very snobby, and they're like, if you don't know the name of the degree of oxidization of your oolong, and exactly what varietal it comes from, you're not part of our club. Fall in love with something, drink it because it comes from someone and you love it, and however you like it. If you want to put milk in it or sugar in it or have it cold or hot, that's all good. But it's not that difficult to step away from the tea bag and the industrial, the one that's made in a factory for price and volume rather than for deliciousness. It's really just putting some leaf in water and straining it off. And if you can use a French press or a cafetiere for your coffee, which is not so like highfalutin, there's no difference between that. I think a French press, a cafetiere comes from a teapot. That's the design. And once you start playing around with temperature and infusion time, you can get so much more flavor out of your tea. You're not limited to the regime of the tea bag, which says, boiling water 3 minutes. There's a whole nother world out there. If you take a beautiful green tea and you put water on at 70 degrees, the amino acids that have the beautiful flavors will dissolve in the water, and the strong tannins, the things that make your mouth pucker and dry out your mouth, they won't dissolve. So you'll get a sweeter, more delicious flavor. And if you want to drink cold tea, if you cold extract it in the fridge, those tannins won't dissolve either, and it'll be stable for 3 days, and you can get this incredible extractions, and you can, make a delicious iced tea with, oh my gosh, without any need for sugar. And that's quite a fun thing. If you want to drink a very strong, forceful tea, using boiling water and extending the extraction time can be brilliant. If you want it softer and sweeter, lower temperature and lower extraction time, like a Gai one can be done in a few seconds, but that's high leaf to water ratio. So lots of leaf in water, you can do it really quick. Different temperatures, you can extract different flavors. And there's this world to enjoy out there, and it's not complicated, it's just fascinating. And I really think that the tea bag is a very, very sad thing. A tea bag is a single use of precious natural resources, whether it's made of wood, from paper, that's forests we're cutting down, or whether it's made from corn, that's still a natural resource that shouldn't be used. Well, it's sad to use that for a single use. And it's been made into a plastic which releases, whether it's made from corn or from oil, or it's still reducing nanoplastics into the world, which get into our food and our water and ourselves. And all the industrial chemicals that need to turn trees into paper or corn into plastic or whatever it is that you're drinking the meal bag is made from, that doesn't disappear. That's all that manufacturing process, all those chemicals and bleaches and glues and solvents that you need, they will be present in your teacup. So it's better for the environment and better for you and much better for flavor to just drink your tea loose. And I think that people think it's a bit snobby or elitist, and it's really not. It's just, that's another thing. This is snobby and elitistness. I think for British people, it came from the Second World War. Tea became a very difficult commodity to get because Britain is a small island and there were U-boats, German submarines all around trying to blockade the country, and so things that were imported by the government, by the army. It was very important, and they were rationed. So British people didn't think they could get through the war without tea, so the government took over control and supply, and you got a ration book where you were allowed a certain amount of grams of tea a week. And it was industrial tea, it was the cheapest tea, that they could get hold of, and everybody had the same. So if you were the Duchess of Devonshire or the Duchess of Devonshire's gardener, you had the same tea. And that was a lovely egalitarian moment in British history. And it worked. After the Second World War, we realized by working together, by everyone being more equal, we could achieve great things, and it was a better way of being. So after that, we had free healthcare, free education, unemployment benefit, all those wonderful things of the welfare state that came in and made our country more egalitarian and more prosperous, and it really worked. And something I'm very proud of, like free healthcare for everyone at the point of need. That's wonderful. If someone falls out of work, that they have a benefit to pensions, for education for everybody. These were, really great times. And I think that this idea that everyone had the same tea was this kind of leveling as well. And then if you say to someone, oh, well, I'm going to drink something other than the kind of ration tea, it's like, oh, there's a class betrayal somehow, a betrayal of your brothers and sisters. But actually, the real betrayal is your brothers and sisters in East Africa, in India, in Sri Lanka, who are living in poverty. So you can have a cheap tea bag, and the big guys, the brokers, the big brands, the huge multinationals, they're taking the profit. So I think that we've got to rethink that whole culture war.
It's complex for sure. Yeah.
There's nothing like that in China. It's really wonderful to be there, and you buy what you can afford. You go to the tea shop and you buy what you can afford. Perhaps the young people are drinking more of the iced teas, but there's still this understanding, like young people have in France, that if you want a really good wine, you have to pay for it.
Absolutely. So, talking about different cultures and different countries and teas and all that sort of stuff, what is the sort of most sort of happy or surprising memory you have in different culture in different countries about tea? And do you remember one particular tea that this is like the best that I've ever had?
Not the best. I love everyone. I mean, all the teas at Red Tea Company, they're ones I've chosen because I absolutely love them. Um, I'm still very partial to White Silvertip, the first tea I fell in love with in Fuding and Fushan. But there was one time I was visiting Sikkim in the Indian Himalayas, and I arrived in the middle of the night on a tea farm, and it was dark, and they took me to a room inside the tea sheds, above the withering sheds. So when you're, especially with black tea, they pick it in the day, and then in the evening or in the afternoon, could go overnight. There'll be the tea is laid out on a sort of flatbed with heat coming through from underneath, just to soften the leaf and let some of the moisture leave the leaf, so it's more pliable for rolling. And the aromas of the leaf leaving the tea is just the most incredible aroma. And I slept above the withering sheds, and I just went to sleep with the smell of this, the most beautiful perfume in the world. And then in the morning I woke up and I could see the peaks of the Himalayas, and then I got to drink that tea that had been dried overnight. I mean, I do really love the whole Himalayan region, from China all across. I think the tea is very high, it's very slow growing, it's this natural environment, it's very intense, great flavors, and it's really different. You go from from Nepal to Sikkim, you're going to get very different flavor profiles, but still in the kind of, you would know it was Himalayan.
So they have sort of the same
Well, they have
flavor
this
profile,
florality,
kind
but
of.
it's not floral. It's like we call it florality in the tea world, but it's not like roses or jasmine. It's just very heady on the aroma. And then you get this kind of chocolatey, caramelly base underneath. So it's not like an Assamica, which is malty and rich underneath. It's definitely more in the kind of burnt sugar chocolate realm for the base notes. And then the high notes are just like off the scale. You might get mango, and you might get a lot of tropical fruit. Sort of the middle flavors you might get in a Taiwan yin, in an oolong. But you can get that from a black tea or a green tea. Extraordinary. But then this tea, the Malawi Antler that we're drinking right now, this is, I told you when I arrived, this is my favorite. When you arrived, my favorite tea. It's so extraordinary. I'm not astounded when I drink it. Every time I drink it, I think, how can this taste like peaches and apricot? How can these crazy little stems? And it's so innovative. Alexander Kay, who created this tea, it comes from his imagination, his ingenuity, his desire to produce something for the world that is so good that we'll be forced to sit up and listen. This tea is in Noma. This tea, the first place it ever went was the Fat Duck back in Heston's day. It's been served in the best restaurants and hotels around the world. It's served at Claridges. It's that good. It sits right up there with the Gyokuro. And it comes from a country where people don't take notice of the tea or don't know it came from there. If you ask most people, where is Malawi, they don't know. And if you ask them if tea came from there, they would say no, which is really crazy. And Alex is not trying to, work on your sympathy. He's trying to work on your palate and say, wow, and put his country on the map, not just for himself, but for all tea makers. He's an extraordinarily good guy. Yes. I've met some amazing people in the tea world, really, and having a reason to sit in people's homes and eat with them and hear their stories and meet their children and find a way to be a part of their lives is a real privilege.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of tea producers, and they're always very welcoming and try to tell you what they know and share obviously what they make and all the whole process, how does it work, and whatever they know, they're more than happy to share with you, which is what I find in the food world. You get that, but not as much. I guess maybe because tea is more.
It depends. I mean, I think it depends who they're sharing. There is some protectionism within the tea world and like special processes and stuff like that. With But I found the really nice thing about working with small producers. I think these are the guys you're talking about, not the big industrial guys, and not the, but the small people who are working their farms. They're very happy to share, and then together we have a wealth of knowledge. So, like, I've taken a farmer from East Africa to Sri Lanka and into the Himalayas to learn and to share knowledge, and they're very, very happy to do that and find solutions. And they don't always work from one place to the next, but it's super fascinating. There's a guy in Japan, Sakamoto-san, who sprays his tea with water when it gets to freezing because it can't drop below freezing. So because the tea could get very damaged at certain points if the temperature drops below 0. So he sprays it with water to freeze it, which is such a revolutionary idea, because inside the ice, the tea can't drop below because the ice is keeping it at 0. And this is knowledge that he's shared with other people in different parts where they get very, very cold, like in the Himalayas. And that's been really revolutionary to a lot of people who sometimes lost whole harvests.
Right. Last couple of questions. Thanks again for Henrietta being with us today. So, tell us one secret, so to speak, maybe in the organic tea world, however you define it.
Gosh, I do like to buy tea that is grown organically. I think the secret is the farmer. I think at one of the MAD symposiums, I do the tea for Noma, and I make the tea for those crazy, wonderful food symposiums in Copenhagen. And I met Farron Adria. He said, if you're looking for really great produce, look for great farmers. He said, the best people care about land, people, communities, and they also produce the best flavors. And I really think that's the truth of tea. So if you meet people who care about the long-term sustainability of the land that they're growing their tea on, they care about the community around them, they're almost invariably producing amazing flavor. And so when you get a truly sustainable tea, and they don't always have an organic stamp. That's the secret. I don't look for farmers who can afford to certify organic, because that's a very expensive, very difficult game. And it's usually the big guys can do it. So I get my tea tested in Germany now, to make sure that it doesn't have pesticides and herbicides and it's clean. But I look for farmers who really care about long-term sustainability. And sustainability is not just environmental, it is also economic and it's social. Like, what is happening with the community? Are they getting the money they need? It's not just whether the tea is clean or not. Real long-term sustainability in tea means we need to pay a decent bit of money for it, and we need to make sure that the community around it can thrive. It's quite urgent. I don't want to make you feel terribly responsible, but every tea lover can play a part in this.
It's good to know the importance of what's happening in general, right?
Yeah, imagine if if you knew the life expectancy of the person that was making your tea, which is true of parts of Assam in India and East Africa, was in the 50s. That's as long as they can live in the tea communities. It's not okay, really, is it? It's not worth it. Mm-hmm. A cheap tea bag is not worth that.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And last question, since we just passed.
Sorry, I keep banging on about all the same things. Sorry, I'm
no worries. As we pass New Year's, what's any exciting plans you have in 2026?
2026, the spring is coming, so this is my time. I travel every year to visit tea gardens. Last year I spent a lot of time in China. This year I'm going up into the Himalayas, as I said, and to Sri Lanka. I'm going to travel, from the base of the continent, Sri Lanka, up through India into the Himalayas. And I just can't wait. And I'm going to take, hopefully, I think this comes off, I'm going to take quite a famous British chef. Because you know that the first champions of great tea were chefs. That's how my company still really supplies mostly hospitality, people who really care about food and drink. So